What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me here on episode 26 of the 90 Feet from Home Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We are presented by Underdog Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Orrico. You guys can check me out over on Twitter at Joe Orrico99. That's where I post out all of my new content, podcasts, articles, Patreon stuff, notes, way too much stuff, but you guys can check it all out at Joe Orrico99. Doing a special live edition of the show. I've done a bunch of live podcasts over the last couple of years, but haven't done one yet through the first 25 episodes of this show. So episode 26, it is a live mailbag with my good buddy JP at DAP Scout from Fantasy Six Pack, which is now an Old Man Squad presentation as well. So we're kind of colleagues at this point, JP. It's cool to get back behind the mic with you. I know we did a show a few weeks ago on your podcast, but it's great to have you on the new show.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, thanks so much for having me on. And at the same time, it was great seeing you at the coffee machine here just a little bit ago. Being in the same office has just been phenomenal. Thanks so much for lunch, by the way. But, I loved having you on our show, and I kept begging you. I was like, "Can I be on your show, please?" And I think finally I was able to bribe you enough. So thank you so much for having me on.
No, I absolutely love talking with you, man. You're a hoot. You're a lot of fun to get behind the mic with. And Fantasy Six Pack is doing some great work. Do you want to just share what's going on? Are there upcoming shows, any fun guests, or
Yeah.
anything that you want to plug before we get going here?
No problem. Yeah, Fantasy Six Pack show is actually going to be kicking off tonight in about 6 hours or so, 8:30 8:30 Central, and then 9:30 Eastern as well. And we're doing just a lot of updates to our site as well, so you can have our latest award-winning, tips, and also, of course, our Discord as well. So love to see everybody join there as well. And of course, I read your stuff all the time on Twitter.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. The whole colleague thing, we're kind of joking, but kind of not. Like, we're both under the same umbrella. You're doing your thing, we're doing our thing. That's kind of the great thing about this new network.
Yep.
We can have 5, 6, 10 fantasy baseball shows. There's no problem. We're all helping each other out here. There's no stiff competition. We're all just trying to boost each other up. It's funny that you mentioned like the whole like walking around the office thing. I remember talking with Jeff Erickson a few weeks ago, and there used to be, I'm not sure if there still are, RotoWire offices in Madison or somewhere in Wisconsin. And there's a couple stories of these guys that used to go out and play basketball in their lunch hour, and they'd actually all get together in the office. And it's just like these guys work together in the fantasy space, but they actually were, hanging out in person. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around
Right.
in the Zoom/StreamYard world we live in. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be here for an undetermined amount of time. It's kind of up to you guys. If you guys are peppering us with questions, maybe we'll be here all night. But we are going to be here for at least a half an hour or so, half an hour, 45 minutes, just talking through some fantasy baseball topics and getting your questions in. Ty, good afternoon, sir. If you got any questions, please do drop them. And I will remind everybody watching here on YouTube, it is a new YouTube channel. I think there's about 300 subscribers. Keep adding to that total. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming up. I plan on doing a live trade deadline show, which is about, God, I guess it's only about 6 weeks away at this point. Where the hell is the season gone? I don't even know.
I don't
But
know.
there's also a bunch of episodes for you guys to check out. Frank Stanfield, Nick Pollock, Jeff Erickson, tons of fun guests we've had over the last couple of weeks. Those are also in video form for you guys to be checking out as well. But we have a question. Our first question of the day is about Jackson Chourio. Seems to be heating up slowly but surely. Do you agree? And are you buying in? JP, what are your thoughts on Jackson Chourio? He started off red hot, cooled down a little bit. Seemed like the playing time was a bit in question, but he's been pretty good recently. Are you bought back in on Jackson Chourio?
Okay. So this is one of those things that makes it hard for fantasy, right? It's because you have the real life player, then you have the fantasy player. So from the real life perspective, what he's doing right now is, especially at his age, is pretty amazing, right? He's almost league average in a lot of aspects, and like you said, he's kind of heated up, gone down, and he's getting all the playing time he needs. But at 20 years old, in a season-long league, I don't know. I think there's some other kind of better options out there for you, especially in outfield. But dynasty, sky's the limit. Absolutely bought in. See a ton of tools there. I just don't know right now with that offense. I think Milwaukee's kind of they were somebody who I was actually looking at not starting my pitchers against there for a while, because they look like somebody who is just very sneaky, going to put up a bunch of runs against you. Churio's amazing again, but he's one of those guys I'm going to kind of look at from afar until I start seeing a lot more out of him right now.
I'm kind of on the fence a little bit, and I think it is format dependent. If you're in a 5 outfielder league, a 15-team league, then I think you got to be still taking a shot on him. He was actually dropped in one of my 15-teamers earlier in the season, and I probably overbid on him. I think I bid like 15% of my budget, which is kind of regretting it a little bit at this point. I think I would just kind of smitten with the raw skills that we're seeing, because even though he's struggled, we're still looking at 7 homers, 7 steals. I think he could still get to 2020 even in a relatively poor rookie season, which to your point just speaks to how bright the future can be for Jackson Chourio. I think if you have a free space on like a 12-teamer, it wouldn't hurt. He has been heating up a little bit, but outfield is in those shallow leagues. It's so deep. If you're talking a 12-teamer with 3 outfielders, 36 guys, let's call it 40, 45 with benches and utility, you got to be pretty damn good to get to be viable in those really shallow formats. So I think he's more skewed towards the deeper leagues right now, but in the dynasty context, I think it's a great time to buy any of these guys who have kind of struggled. Chourio, Jackson Holiday, Wyatt Langford. I'm not the biggest dynasty player, but it feels like their prices probably aren't going to be where they were even in just a couple months ago. Chourio, people might look at the 220 batting average and say, okay, he's been at the bottom of the order. Probably cheaper than he would have cost 2 months ago, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Let me ask you this. So one of my strategies has always been, especially in these leagues, that I have a utility or DH or things of that nature, is to always kind of leave one spot open for the flavor of the month, the person who's super hot right now and everybody wants, right? So with Chourio, would you pick, let's say, a David Hamilton over Chourio right now? Again, not long term, but right now you have an open spot. It's between those two.
Yeah, I think I would. He's been like a top 20 player the last month. He's been
Yeah.
insane. I think I'd have to go with David Hamilton there.
Yeah, and see that's the way I've always kind of played there. I think Churio's a guy who is not quite vying for my starting lineup. Yes, I mean great for a bench spot. Again, kind of watching that piece, but he's just not there for starting. Now, again, if you have 5 outfielders, first off, bless you for being in such a crazy league. But and I've been in those leagues, or like 30 teamers, right? Yeah, of course you're picking up Chourio. But if you're picking like 12 teams standard, 5x5. I think he might be on my bench, maybe.
That's totally fair. That flavor of the month spot is really important. It's very tricky in like 10-team ESPN leagues because their rosters have been shrinking over the last couple of years.
Yes.
You don't really have a lot of room to play around, but it is nice to have one of those spots, and maybe you hit throughout the year. Maybe Elliot Ramos does turn out to be the next coming of Barry Bonds, and maybe you get lucky with those little pickups. We got another question here. Jonathan India or Brandon Lau rest of season in a head-to-head categories league. I feel like I'd have to lean towards India. I just don't trust Brandon Lau to stay healthy. That's really the main thing. You also factor in the weather heating up in Great American Ballpark. I think Jonathan India could end up kind of repeating what he did as a rookie. We're seeing maybe 20 homers, maybe 10, maybe 20's pushing it, but like 15 homers, double-digit steals. I think that India is probably the safer option long term. What are your thoughts, though, JP?
Yeah. So this is so funny to me because at the beginning of the season, we would have been like, "Oh my God, where's India going to play?" Right? Or, there's no way. Now he's got a ton of playing time, and that's exactly the problem, right? Brandon Lau, whichever one he is. I don't know if he's going to play, but on top of that, India's going to at least play half of his games in one of the best home ballparks in the league, right? Absolutely amazing offensive numbers. So I will all day go for that. Kind of like how we used to, picture for Rockies hitters all the time. That's what I go with Reds. So for that reason alone, I'd pick India over Lau. But then the health comes into play, and I just don't know what Tampa Bay is going to do. They might turn him into a pitcher next week. Who knows? I just try to avoid that altogether and go India.
It's kind of sad with Brandon Lau. If you just look at the year-by-year numbers, 2021, he had 39 homers, 97 runs, 99 ribbies, even stole 7 bases for you. And then the next couple seasons, we were paying some pretty nice premiums on Brandon Lau. If there's anything that makes me interested, I mean, I kind of have interest in both for now. Like if you can pick up Brandon Lau off the waiver wire and he's able to somehow stay healthy, that could be really valuable for you. I think it's only a matter of time until he's on the shelf again. If you're just looking at the recent track record since the beginning of 2022, we're looking at just barely over a full season's worth of games. It's like 180 some odd games over the last 2.5 seasons. So there is definitely some reason to worry there. the Jonathan India thing is hilarious. You know, the fantasy baseball gods always find a way.
Yep.
I was having this conversation about Luis Heel a couple weeks ago, and how is he going to stay in the rotation for the Yankees? And of course, Clark Schmidt happens, and the fantasy baseball gods do find a way. But I think both of us are more on the Jonathan India side as opposed to Brandon Lau.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Did you say Clark Schmidt happens? Because if you say Schmidt happens, that sounds like
Schmidt
a bumper sticker. That sounds like a bumper sticker to me. So
I,
sorry.
I didn't even mean it in that way, but
I know that. I just sorry. It's just all right.
Schmidt
Get the
does
giggles
happen.
out. Get the. I'm a 5-year-old in heart. Sorry. Get the
Oh,
giggles
no,
out.
that's hilarious. I honestly, I should have seen that one. But it's true. Schmidt does happen. Luis Heel is in that rotation for now.
Yep.
And the fantasy world does kind of have these openings that pop up with injuries or demotions or PED suspensions or whatever it is. There's always a way that it ends up working itself out. This is an interesting one. Austin Riley, he might be the person I get more questions about than anybody. We went into some depth on the show with Frank Stanfield the other day. But what are your thoughts on Austin Riley, what we've seen so far? 3 home runs in 52 games. He's pacing at about a 9 home run pace right now. 225 batting average, 20 ribbies. The Braves suck right now. The Braves offense since I think April 26th or April 27th is the worst offense in baseball. The Nationals came in and just destroyed Jake Irvin, masterclass, Mitchell Parker, Trevor Williams, no-name pitchers coming out for I don't understand it. It's kind of a team problem at this point. I'm sure losing Acuna doesn't help there, but
Right.
Riley struggled, Albies has struggled, Matt Olson hasn't really been what we've expected. What are your thoughts on Riley and I guess kind of the Braves as a whole? Is it just a matter of time until they pick it up? I'm inclined to think it is, but what are your thoughts, JP?
Yeah, so of course you get a lot of questions about him because Austin Riley was a top 12 pick easily in almost every draft,
Yeah.
right? And I think Kevin Keneally, I found a tweet from him yesterday. Kevin Keneally won on Twitter. He put something fantastic on there. He's like, the league has figured out Austin Riley is the worst hitter in baseball against a fastball, and thus has suddenly started seeing more fastballs than anybody else as the season has progressed. It comes down to something very simple, right? Austin Riley, if he is the professional hitter that we know and seen him be, he needs to make an adjustment. If he's seen a ton of fastballs, he needs to show those pitchers that he can hit it. And if not, then guess what? Almost, I think every pitcher in the league can throw a fastball. I'm sorry, that's bread and butter. I know that we're all working on sweepers now and everything else, but other than a few knuckleballers out there, almost everybody can throw a fastball. And if you can't hit that, you're going to be in a world of hurt, and fantasy owners are going to be in a world of hurt. I don't see how he doesn't make an adjustment. There's too many veterans on that team. The Braves organization is too good at making these kind of scouting reports and adjustments and things of that nature. I just see him figuring this out and going crazy. But this is the first time, let's say June 13th, that I've had just even a smidgen of doubt when I said those words. Like I had to push it a little bit harder than just because I needed to believe those words. Having Austin Riley in way too many leagues. Well, I still believe, but I'm starting to have doubts if that makes sense. As for the whole Braves team, I mean, it's like the Rays in the sense that there was a lot of kind of, okay, I just need to have a piece of this Braves offense that's going to take off. And for the Rays, I need a piece of this bullpen, and the bullpen there's been terrible. With the Braves, again, it goes to the thing of, I get Acuna's gone, fine. But you're supposed to have a ton of other talent. I mean, we're talking about a catcher that was supposed to be top 10. We're talking about a first baseman. All these different pieces were supposed to be there, along with an incredible farm system. And you're telling me that, Acuna is the reason we're falling off. They made an Orioles rookie pitcher that looked pretty decent, look like an ace this week. So I honestly don't know what's going on there. If it's a matter of there needs to be a shakeup, if there's infighting, something else is going on below the numbers that we're not seeing. Because with that organization, and as solid as they are, I'm at a loss.
That's totally fair. I wonder if there's part of it that is a morale thing with Acuna being gone. That might be factoring into it to some degree, but this predated the Acuna injury, these struggles. Right. With Riley, if you look at the hard hit rate, it's exactly the same as it was last year. The barrels are slightly down, but he's coming from such an elite 14% barrel rate. He's down at just below 11%. That should be quite a few more than 3 homers. He has 16 barrels and only 3 home runs this season. It's not what I would expect to continue. Last season, he had 66 barrels and 37 homers. I think with Austin Riley, it's still a good time to buy, but I do agree with what you're saying that it's kind of like we're 43% of the way through the year. That's pretty bad shit if you're in a head-to-head league. Like if you're in a roto league, it will eventually come back around and okay, he's probably gonna end up with 25 homers, 85 ribbies or whatever. Head-to-head, you might have lost a few weeks because your first rounder or maybe your second rounder in the shallower league has been killing you. And I think it will get better, but this Braves team as a whole might have a bit of that hangover from last year where they were like one of the greatest offenses we've seen. They had 530 home run hitters. They were historically good offensively. Maybe it's a little bit of a hangover from that, but it would be hard to be like, sometimes I got a message and it's, should I trade Austin Riley for
Right.
whoever? And it's like, do you really want to take on like Jerks and Profar or whoever? Like, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. As much as right now, if you look at the stats and ignore the names, you'd easily take Profar probably, but
Of course.
the track record of Austin Riley, my common refrain heading into the year was you can write his stats down in pen and you know what they're going to be. That hasn't really been the case, but 30, 35 homers, 100 ribbies, 260 batting average. I think we'll still get close to that, but definitely every day that goes on with another offer is making it that much more concerning to buy in. But another last thing I'll say on Riley is if you're buying him now, none of what he's done so far is affecting your fantasy team. You're buying in that 225 batting average, 3 homers. Like you're getting likely the better part of Austin Riley if you're buying in now without having to take on the ugliness of the first 52 games. 52 games, and he's combined for 48 runs and RBIs put together.
Now,
Last season,
so you're talking about people that are trying to trade Riley away. Would you flip that in Dynasty especially? Are you still feeling okay about buying Riley? Because I'm sure if somebody's gonna if somebody would trade me Riley for Profare, oh my god, I would, I
I
would
don't
be
think
like,
that's happening. But
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, something like that. I mean, if I could get, shoot, if I get 70 cents on the dollar, like discount to buy Riley,
yeah.
I'm still in on that. How about you?
Absolutely. I'd buy him at 90 cents on the dollar, probably.
Right.
But for Jerks and Profar, it's an interesting one because I don't think what he's doing is terribly sustainable. But again, with these guys, like you get further and further into the season, it's like maybe it is. I find it hard to believe he's just breaking out 12 years after being a top prospect. It's like the post hype sleeper here.
Right.
But in a dynasty sense, I think people are going to reject that out of hand. In redraft, you might have some people that were like, oh, Profar, he's in a good lineup, batting at the top. He's giving you 5 categories. Some people might be willing to make that swap. I'm definitely taking Riley there, no question. But the fact that we're having this discussion of Jerks and Profar versus Austin Riley, it's tricky stuff, man. It's been pretty ugly. But I feel like it has to turn around for Austin Riley at some point. And I think that is coming. We're going to see the weather warm up. Atlanta's going to be pretty damn hot in the summer months. We're probably going to see balls flying out of parks a little more than we have so far. So I'm not overly concerned, but I'm not exactly happy with what I've seen so far either from Mr. Austin Riley. Scotty's asking about his dynasty team. He's taken over in the second year, year 10 of the league. Wow, dynasty league that goes that long. I commend you guys. They're usually done in about 3 or 5 years at most. Built a pitching core of Skeens, Painter, Wu, Bradish, Mason Miller, and Luis Heel. Pretty solid stuff. But my hitting core is lacking. Who should I target there? I would, it really, if you're still in the chat, I'd like to know, like, roughly if you've tried any trades, because every league is so specific. I think Luis Heel is a decent sell. I just don't think that he is really performing. I think what he's doing is kind of unsustainable in terms of incredibly low BABIP. Very high strand rate, very high walk rate. I think this is a decent time to sell him before we start to see some of that regression hit a little bit. In terms of what you can trade him for, if you can get like a top 75 or top 100 player, I think that's probably correct. JP, I think you're a little more dynasty prospect focused than I am, though.
Yeah.
If you're looking at this group and you're trying to get out from under somebody, would it be Luis Heel? Would it be maybe Bradish? I mean, Skeens is a tricky one to trade right now. But what's your thoughts on this group as a whole? Who would you be targeting?
Well, So I'm not sure if the question is who am I targeting in trade or who should I target on the waiver wire. On the waiver wire, David Hamilton's a great. Like we just mentioned him as well. Tyler Locklear is another great one. He was a great prospect as well, and somebody that definitely we should be looking at along those lines. But if you're gonna go with who you should target, I mean, I love, like, for instance, Duran is just starting to break out, and he's a great kind of 4 category play there for you as well, and somebody that you could probably get 2 or 3 bats. If you do with Heel, if you decide that you want to trade him out because he's going to be shut down at some point. He's going to either turn into a bullpen arm or be shut down. He's way over his innings count for the last 2 years. I think you could absolutely get just an huge bag of prospects slash hitters right now if you decided to do that, because yes, there's going to be regression. He's going to be shut down. His price is going to drop because of that. So before the All-Star break, I'd go crazy there. And then there's a couple other players too that are kind of starting to take off, that if you need somebody again on the waiver wire as well, like Paul DeJong. I mean, he's super hot right now. So there, you can do a mix right there if that's what you're asking. If you're doing waiver, if you're doing trade, I'd be looking honestly for higher than top 75. You can probably go top 50 depending on where you're going. Go for that younger talent and go from that standpoint. But love to know what additional details you might have if you're still in the chat.
Yeah, always more context is always it always helps. I think with Luis Heel, I posted starting pitcher rankings yesterday. The full top list is on Patreon, and I posted the top 10 on Twitter. And then I had a few people who are like, no Luis Heel in the top 10. And I'm thinking, come on. I mean, he's great. He's been great. But if people are going to start viewing him in that lens where they think he's a top 10 pitcher, maybe you can even shoot higher than top 50. I mean, this is dynasty. It's different than redraft. Maybe people are going to view it, but maybe they won't view it differently. Luis Heel is what, 25? Is he 20? No, he's 26. He just turned 26, actually.
Wow.
A couple weeks ago. Happy belated, Luis. I don't think you're listening, but if you are, happy birthday. I think regression's coming for you, buddy. I just look at the BABIP, and it's lower than any other qualified starter in baseball at 185. He is stranded 82.8% of base runners, also a top 10 mark. And if you look at the other guys in these top strand rate lists, it's Seth Lugo, Javier Assad, Marcus Stroman, Tyler Anderson, Ronel Blanco. It's not to say that he is the same as those guys, but generally speaking, it's a list of regression candidates, these guys who have stranded so many batters. You add in the Tommy John factor, you add in the Garrett Cole coming back, and Schmidt will come back eventually from what we've heard as well. Like, I think there are a few problems with just Luis Heel. Scotty's got a follow up. What'd you say about pushing Heel for Corbin Carroll? If you can trade Heel for Corbin Carroll, I would absolutely do it. Carroll's a tricky one, and there's been a popular topic of conversation on my show everywhere. I mean, how can you not talk about the biggest bust in fantasy? He was a first round ADP, sometimes going as high as number 2 or 3 overall. And he's been miserable to the point where I've gotten drop questions about him. I think in the long run, it's hard to be overly concerned about a guy so young who just was so good as a rookie. I worry about the shoulder, but at the same time, we haven't heard them actually say there's a shoulder problem recently. But like I mentioned that show I did with Frank, and he came in with a stat the other day about since Carroll went down with that initial shoulder injury, forget the exact numbers, but it's like he's garbage. He's been awful. So if you can capitalize on that downturn that we've seen from him, especially in a dynasty context, because redraft, we're getting to the point where Carroll's not really going to return a lot of value, I don't think. But dynasty, if you can secure a 23, 24-year-old Corbin Carroll, I would absolutely do that for Luis Heel.
So just so you can go back to that, when he hurt his shoulder, right? His numbers since then, 425 plate appearances. So a good sample. Just 8 home runs, but he's had 38 stolen bases because the stolen bases don't affect your shoulder. 259, 345, and 395, but 105 WRC plus, but 34.6% hard hit rate, which is, of course, dropping. But I mean, last 15 games has been pretty darn good. Again, I'd rather have that upside. There's so much that can go wrong with pitchers, and especially one that didn't come in here with a lot of innings and now is going to be going over his cap by a bunch. That always scares me. So I just all day long Corbin Carroll. So apologize for jumping in there, but I found those numbers for you.
No, that's great to hear. I couldn't remember exactly where he was, but I knew it was bad. It's pretty bad stuff. But I think in the long term, you almost always will take the position player over the pitcher in Dynasty, just in a vacuum. But especially when it's a pitcher who's just come out of nowhere like this with heel versus a guy in Corbin Carroll, who if somebody had told you that you could do this trade a couple months ago, you would have,
Yeah.
just given them a sobriety test to see if they were all right.
Yep.
Now it's like a question a little bit, but I still would happily get Corbin Carroll if you can capitalize on some of that worry, because I feel like if we're doing like a redraft for today, I know it's different. It's dynasty versus redraft, but I don't even know if he goes in the top like 50, 75 picks. I don't know where he goes, but the bloom is off the rose with Corbin Carroll, and I think you can probably capitalize on that right now.
Riley or Carroll?
Riley. I think
Wow.
Riley. There's less to worry about, I think, in terms of a potential injury. It's a better lineup around him, more of a track record. I would have to say Riley, unless you're like desperate for speed. If you're desperate for speed, Carroll's going to help out more, but I think Riley's a little more well-rounded. What about you?
Yeah, yeah. It's just because the Carroll thing just seems like it's a continuation, right? Like I don't know what's going on. I thought it was going to heal over the summer. The Riley thing just doesn't seem like it has any like validity to it. Like the numbers just don't make any sense. Yeah, I told you about the fastball, but everything there just seems quickly fixable. The Carroll thing makes me think that there's something else going on in the body, the health, whatever the case may be, and that's a little bit more like not a quick fix.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm talking here with my buddy JP at Dap Scout over on Twitter. You can find his work over at Fantasy Six Pack. And I remember you were doing some stuff with Curlin for a while. Is that still going on? I know you did a couple podcasts with him. What's the
Yep.
deal with MLB playing time?
Yeah, and we'll be playing time. I mean, Curlin. I think the two most active accounts, behind the Eric Crosses of the world and all that stuff, would be you and Curlin. I think my feed is mostly just that. You have the quick hits all the time and have some great things, and then Curlin always like the first thing I say is, please, Curlin, don't mention any of the players I have on my team, because if he does, typically it means they just got injured or their playing time's going down. So it's one of those things. Yeah, we're going to be kicking back up with more podcasts as well. So MLB playing time. His site's great. And he only focuses on one thing. And I think that's just a great thing about it. You can find out where your guy is in the lineup. Have they become moved it further down the lineup? Have they been moving up? And of course, we know in fantasy, we always want to get that top 5, top 4 hitters, because we want more plate appearances.
Absolutely. What Curlin's doing is it's cool to outsource certain things in your analysis, even to somebody who focuses on this like full time. You can't cover everything, and Curlin's got playing time covered for you pretty damn well over there. Little shout out to him, good buddy of mine, Mike Curlin. But if you guys are here in the chat, I appreciate it. Throw your questions. We're gonna keep going, but make sure you subscribe to the channel. That's very important. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, do all that stuff to help the algorithm do its thing. I've never really been informed about how the algorithm works, but I know that the more thumbs up, the more comments, the more subscribers, the better chance we have to get this thing off the ground. Thank you, guys. Let's get another question here. Better player to roster for the rest of the season, Mark Vientos or David Hamilton? Have to lean Hamilton based on how hot he's been right now, but JP, I'm interested what you have to say.
Oh, David Hamilton. I mean, it's not even anytime somebody is, especially depending on where you are in fantasy, like what categories you have, stolen bases is always an issue. But on top of that, when you have somebody to get on base like Hamilton has, and he starts becoming a creator of runs and all these different things, kind of like Duran was before he's become the Duran that we know now, who can just score at will and he actually has pop. David Hamilton really reminds me of kind of that old school, if you played fantasy for 10 years or 20 or whatever, that you'd get that was just like your stolen base freak. He's that guy, but now he's really kind of contributing in like 2 other categories as well. So I'm a big Hamilton fan. I think Vientos is good, but I think you can find a replacement for Vientos on the waiver wire pretty easily. Again, depending on your league size. But Hamilton, I don't think he's a one-trick pony. I think that's definitely somebody I'd like to have on my roster.
Yeah, Hamilton's coming at you with the I mean, I guess it depends on your game threshold. Some of them, Vientos might just have third base, but I think David Hamilton everywhere at this point has second and short. He's giving you kind of like my initial thought was Vientos if you need more power, but David Hamilton's got 4 home runs. Vientos has 5. It's a different bit of a difference in at bats, but it's not like a crazy. I think Vientos has more power, but it's not like it's that big of a difference right now that I could even justify it, especially when Hamilton is stealing bases. He's doing everything for you. I got really excited. Boston had him batting second yesterday, and I thought, "Ooh,
Wow.
okay, maybe that sticks." They moved him back down to eighth yesterday, the day after he batted second, and then he hit a home run batting eighth. So it doesn't really matter right now with David Hamilton. Every time I open up his player pages on the different apps, the percentage is going up. He's been added in 32% of Yahoo leagues over the last week. He was somebody who was like below 5%. So I think he is the more favorable asset. There's also the Lowell Mets factor of there's just everything seems to go wrong for the Mets at any given time. I don't have a lot of faith in their lineup. I think that I would probably put more faith in Boston, especially playing in a better home park there as well. So I think there's a lot of factors that would put me more in the David Hamilton camp here.
100% agree. And it's crazy how quickly he's been picked up everywhere.
Yeah.
Just,
It's like what I mentioned earlier with Elliot Ramos. It looks like anybody who might be, because it doesn't look like Elliot. It looks like Heliot or Helio,
right.
the outfielder for the Giants. He was like 2% rostered, and then it was like 70% rostered. It was like, holy shit! You don't usually see jumps like that.
Right.
But when you see that kind of production, batting at the top of an order, you definitely got to jump at it. And I think David Hamilton, for anybody listening, he is a must roster player right now wherever. And Vientos is probably, should be rostered as well right now, but I think that Hamilton is the preferable of the two. Another question here from MP: better injured pitcher to stash for the rest of the season, Max Scherzer, Robbie Ray, or Jeffrey Springs? My initial thought is Scherzer. I think he's pretty close to being back, and I think the upside is probably higher with him than the others, just, considering he's Max Scherzer. He is an old version of Max Scherzer, but he's still very, very good. I think that he would have to be my choice here if he's still available. But I do love Jeffrey Springs. JP, what are your thoughts on this one?
Wait. How did you get the comp to go on a limb out like that? That Max Scherzer is actually the old version of Max Scherzer. I mean, I just want to know where that comp. I mean, that's an incredible pool. I just want to know what stats you're looking at. Sorry.
Oh, that was no stats at all. That's just
I'm
like
just
Max Scherzer's like 40 years old at this point.
I'm just messing with you, man. I love.
Yeah, I love Scherzer. He's a little old, but he's still Max Scherzer. I'm interested. Would he be your choice there as well?
Yeah, man. So here's the thing, right? I love Springs. My only question is what the rate again, and I don't mean I joke about this, but I really mean it, right? Like the Rays could turn Springs into like a 2 inning opener for the rest of the season. It's just one of those things where they're so kind of numbers oriented and things of that nature. I don't think they give Jeffrey Springs like 3-4 innings, maybe a couple starts, and they might start messing around. Scherzer, they're gonna just put out there and they're gonna be like, hey man, you know your body better than anybody, and you've shown us that you're a workhorse. You go throw pitches. I would love to see Springs take off because I love his ballpark better than Texas, especially Arlington, and when the humidity starts kicking up as well. But yeah, Scherzer out of those three, definitely the choice.
Yeah, Scherzer. I find it crazy that Texas won a World Series essentially with no very limited contributions from Scherzer and nothing from DeGrom. It makes you think, what the hell can these guys do when everybody's healthy this season? I know they haven't been amazing so far, but yeah, once Max Scherzer comes back, we know that he does not stand for any six-man rotations or abbreviated outings. He knows that he's going to be riding into the sunset pretty soon, and I think he's going to want to milk out every potential inning and every pitch that he can. And I think the production is still going to be very solid, even if it's not vintage Max Scherzer. I do trust him more than Robbie Ray, who he's had some great seasons. Hell, I'm a Blue Jay fan. I got to see him in his best season. He won a Cy Young Award, but I think he's pretty inconsistent outside of just the strikeouts. And I completely agree with Jeffrey Springs. The Rays are not great this year. If they were like top of the division or competing a lot more, maybe they'd be a little more willing to take some chances, but I don't know that this is their year, and I think they're probably starting to realize that it's not going to be another miracle Rays season. At least it doesn't look like it at this point. Bottom of the division, 32-36. What are they? 5 out of the wild card. I just don't know that there's a lot of magic, and I think front office that's a fairly intelligent front office. I don't know that they're going to take too many chances. They're intelligent, but they also do some weird stuff that's hard to predict. But I can't see Springs being somebody where they really take too many chances. Guys, get your questions in. We're going to keep going for a little bit here. There's a question over on the Twitter side, and it revolves around Jeremy Pena and James Wood. So thoughts on moving Pena and James Wood for Stephen Kwan in a dynasty league? I think that's a little bit hefty of a price to pay for Stephen Kwan. What about you, JP?
Absolutely not. James Wood alone is way too much to pay for that. If you got away with just the Pena portion, fine. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that much about your league, but Woods, we're talking about a top 10 prospect, absolutely just getting started. What he's done, so far is just tip of the iceberg. Especially in Dynasty, James Wood is somebody you build your team around. I would not make that trade at all.
Yeah, I have to agree. Stephen Kwan, I think, is really, really good. And I think that we probably undervalued him a little bit the last couple seasons, just thinking of him as just a batting average asset. But at the same time, I couldn't get behind this trade. If it was redraft, would you be more interested? Would you make that trade in a redraft sense? I know that's not what the question is, but if anybody
Yeah,
has a similar
yeah,
situation, Kwan's batting 380 at this point. He's been pretty damn good. Would you be willing to do that?
absolutely. Yep,
Yeah.
sure thing. I mean, being able to go in and make some, pickups on waivers and being able to go a little crazier there because my batting average has been set with Quan is something I would absolutely do. Again, hopefully you haven't picked a bunch of light hitters or you don't have an Austin Riley on your roster and suddenly you don't have home runs that you're hoping for because obviously Quan's not going to give that to you. But if you've kind of built it a little bit correctly, you're getting home runs from elsewhere. Quan can let you do a lot of things with your roster, having him up there, and I would do that trade for redraft all day.
Yeah, I think he's almost like a slightly more valuable version of Luis Ariz because there's a little bit more of a well-rounded asset there and a night and day situation in terms of the lineup context. So
Sure.
I really do like Stephen Kwan. I think in redraft you do that. With James Wood, why is he still in the minor leagues? Why? I wrote pieces in March that he should have made the opening day roster, and he's still in the minors despite having a what is it, 355 batting average, 175 WRC plus. He's almost walked more than he struck out. What does the poor bastard have to prove? What does he have to do?
Well, don't you know the Nationals are in contention? I mean, that's what I have no idea what they're doing. I have no idea. So yeah, 100%. Yeah, he should be playing right now. This is the time to do it, right? Look at what CJ Abrams has done, right? And
Yeah.
those types of players that have gotten there, been able to kind of mess up and then turn things around because they got to see a lot of pitches. They've got to kind of be there every day. When they bring up James Wood, they got to do it and play him every day, and just let the chips fall where they may. He's an amazing player, and like I said, he's top 10 for me. So absolutely, do not let him go.
I skipped over a question earlier. I appreciate you pointing it out to me, JP. Chip here asked a pretty good one. Junior Caminero or Jason Dominguez, the 10-team 6x6 roto with OPS, 14 starting hitters, and it's daily. So Jason Dominguez was activated yesterday and then optioned to AAA. Junior Caminero, I think, is still several weeks away from returning from his injury, which I am blanking on what it was. Was it a quad, right? It was a quad
Yeah,
strain or hamstring or something.
it was an
But
upper body that I remember. It was lower
yeah,
body. Yeah,
something on the lower half where he's still expected to be out for several more weeks, but it doesn't appear that Jason Dominguez really has an opening. I find it maddening that Alex Verdugo is stopping Jason Dominguez from being a big leaguer,
yes.
but I think I would probably lean Dominguez if I had to choose one. It's a tough question, JP. I know that you're itching to answer it, though.
Yeah, I would have Jason Dominguez here, and there's a couple reasons why. The first reason is look at his debut versus Camineros versus Holiday, all that stuff. He was electric during his debut. He came out, was hitting home runs. He looked like he belonged. Then he got injured. That's not something we actually kind of put in the talent there as well.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where he looks electric. I love his ballpark. Again, you have to factor in that, especially for a power hitter like that. And he can run. I mean, look, you're talking about two amazing talents, and if you have them both, who else is playing with you in your league? I just want to know, like, you must have done either the best rebuild or you stole a bunch of stuff from your parents who happened to be like the other two players in your league. So yeah, I have Dominguez up, and then on top of that too, right? Once he comes up, I think the Yankees play him. I think the Yankees will find playing time for him. There's uh, an outfielder that they have that hits the ball really hard. That he gets injured a lot. We won't mention his name, but his exit velocity is insane. Um, you know, that's somebody who is going to get injured. There's a bunch of older players there. They're going to get injured. I think when he comes up, he plays again. Going back to Tampa Bay, I don't know if Caminero is going to play every day. And that's another reason why I think Dominguez is going to be given a chance to establish himself and really take off once Giancarlo gets hurt again. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say his name.
It's totally fair, and I know it's kind of taboo, but he's injury prone. He is. Even Aaron Judge has kind of shed that label the last couple seasons, but I wouldn't be shocked if he needs to go down for a couple weeks at some point, or if Alex Verdugo just turns back and he's been fine. Alex Verdugo, he's been good, but I don't really understand it unless they just don't want to shake things up too much. They don't have a need to force Dominguez in, so I guess that makes sense, but it pains me to see Verdugo taking away playing time from such an elite level prospect. MP with a question about needing some help in one of those pesky 5 outfielder leagues we talked about before.
Yeah.
The available options are Lars Nootbaar, Miguel Andujar, Tommy Pham, and Matt Vierling. See, I think Matt with Nootbaar, I almost think that we're overrating him at this point. I don't know that his fantasy game is that valuable unless we're talking about an on-base percentage format. The batting average is pretty solid, but there's not a lot of power. There's not a lot of speed. It's an aging lineup around him. I might have gone Nootbaar previously, but I think, as crazy as it might sound, and even though I think he's a bit of a dickhead, I think I'd go with Tommy Pham. What he does when he's healthy is really, really excellent stuff. Like, I know he's a bit of a peculiar fella, but last year, 16 homers, 22 steals, batted 260. That's pretty good. What he's done when he's been healthy this year in 33 games, he's batting 280, 3 homers, 3 steals. They're going to let him play. As crazy as it sounds, I think I'd go with Tommy Pham at this point, but I'm ready to be made to feel a fool here.
All right. So Tommy Pham, is somebody who by far always is somebody I always try to pick up midseason, because he just seems to always have that thing where you think he's dead and he comes back to life, right? He's like the best horror show possible. Miguel Andujar, we've been waiting for this for
a long time.
I mean, I think he's Miguel Andujar is like 84 years old, so I think about 67 years. I mean, he was a top 5 prospect. He was supposed to be everything for the Yankees. So we know the talent's there. Lars Nootbaar, I think the problem is that I don't trust the Cardinals right now. I don't trust what's going on there. And Matt Vierling, I mean, again, I owned him last year, and I kind of know what I'm going to have there. If I'm looking at upside, I like Miguel Andujar. I'm going to go. This is my ranking here: Miguel Andujar, Matt Vierling, Tommy Pham, Lars Nootbaar, and the 1, 2, and 3 are like this close together. I mean, they're just, you could pretty much interchange him. Tommy Pham, when he gets hot, you ride that all day, because he just does, and then of course he goes into his slumps. But what Miguel Andujar is doing, we've been expecting this for a while, and he definitely has the ability to, I wouldn't say carry a team, but he would definitely be option 2A or 2B on your team. So I definitely would love to see what's going on there, especially in a 5 outfield league. I'm going to take a gamble here, and I'd go Miguel Andujar.
I think that's fair. It's easy to hold his track record against him, but the guy's been injured quite a bit. He's only played one. There's only one season where he's even played more than, get this, 45 games. One time where he's done that. And the one year where he did it in 2018, he played 149 games as a rookie, 27 homers. He batted 297, stole a couple bags. And then since then, it's been 12 games, 21, 45, 36, and 30. We're seeing some signs of life this year. A hilariously low walk rate, which we've always kind of seen from him, but he doesn't strike out a lot. He has an opportunity to play. I could be convinced into Miguel Andujar at this point. I think a lot of it with us is we just haven't seen a lot of him for like 6 years. So everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, Miguel Andujar, but he surprised me a little bit when he first started off a little bit hot. Those first few games, I was like, okay, Oakland, big ballpark, terrible lineup around him. How interested are we going to really be? But he's kept it up here through 15, 20 games. I think he's worth a speculative ad. And the good thing in that situation is you can kind of churn a little bit. We were talking earlier about hottest guy available, whatever. It's trickier in that kind of deep league, but even those 4 guys sitting there on the waiver wire, they're all serviceable 5th outfielders. But I do think that probably Andujar or Pham would be the way to go. Once Pham comes back, because Pham's hurt right now, I don't mind picking up Andujar and then maybe seeing what Tommy Pham can do. Potentially, maybe we see Tommy Pham traded. I feel like the White Sox should just trade everybody. If Pham has a good first half of the season and he does well, why would you carry him through the second half? So that might be something where he ends up in a better lineup potentially, but playing a little bit less. I think Andujar might be the guy because there's nobody going to compete with him there. Who are they going to sit him for? I mean, I can't
No.
even. I can barely name their starting lineup, let alone guys on the bench that might replace him. So, yeah, I think that's a totally fair call.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Real quick, another person you might want to look at, especially in such a deep league, is Kevin Pillar. I mean,
yeah.
I keep waiting for him to fall off. After he got traded from the White Sox to the Angels, he was really thankful for the organization and said, "Hey, I'm gonna turn back the clock." So if Kevin Pillar's out there, I'd pick him over the other four, honestly. So just another name to throw out there for you.
Yeah, I don't. I have Kevin Pillar was a Blue Jay. I'm a Toronto guy. I watched him for most of his career.
Yep.
I don't think he's ever been this good offensively. I don't think he was
No.
ever. I don't think he ever peaked this. I mean, there was one year where he first left Toronto, went to San Francisco, and he was good. I think he was an All Star, but this is crazy. Like he's pacing as like a second round fantasy player or something.
Yeah.
We'll get to one more question here, and it's about Noel Marte. Where will he rank among third basemen when he's activated? I've had a lot of trouble with Noel Marte, and it's almost a cop out. It's kind of cheating, but I need to see what the product is because now there's this whole cloud of the PEDs and how much that impacted what he was doing. And I don't know. I have no idea because he said he has no idea how the PEDs got into his system, the immaculate PED conception here. I don't know how it happened, but I mean, he probably took something. Let's be honest, these things don't just pop up in your cereal. There's a reason why these guys test positive. It's because they're trying to gain some kind of edge. So I wonder if maybe we weren't seeing the true version of him. But he's going into a good ballpark, like we've mentioned, in the middle of the summer when he'll be coming back. He's worth an ad, I think. If you're seeing him out there, he's worth a speculative ad to see what we can get. But expectations are kind of dropped a little bit in my mind just after the whole PED thing. I'm not a big PED guy. I didn't really watch baseball during the steroid era. I'm a little bit too young to have really thrived during that period. So I'm not really attached to the PEDs. I think that there's still kind of a shade you have to put on these guys. You're not sure what they're going to look like without that influence. Is there any worry in your mind about that, or is that just me reading too much into it?
No, of course. I mean, look, anytime I have to kind of think twice about having you on my team because I'm not sure who you are, that's definitely a
Mhm.
problem. But let me say, I'd probably say top 15. And
Yeah.
I'm putting that like if I didn't let's throw the PEDs out for a second, right? Let's say he comes back as who he was. Again, ballpark, absolutely. He's gonna have a ton of playing time. That's the other issue that I was thinking preseason was gonna be a problem. He lost his playing time. They're gonna put him in right away. I mean, I think I put him, Paredes, okay, probably below him, but Garcia with the Royals, okay, then we start getting to the Arenado, Muncies, Morels of the world and Chapman, who haven't been doing a lot, I'd say I'd put him in that category until he starts proving himself. If he starts playing like he did last year with whatever the heck he had in his system, he could easily be, top 12, probably. You start
Yeah.
getting to like the Westbergs of the world and the Kims and things of that nature, but you're not going to be touching the Bregmans, the Royce Lewises, the Devers, the Rileys. So,
Yeah.
sorry, Devers. So yeah, I would definitely say safe top 15, could probably get top 12, and then who knows?
Yeah, that's fair. If you're seeing him out there, worth
Oh
a
yeah.
claim, worth a pickup. Third base is not exactly the deepest position, so that's another kind of bonus there. Where maybe you've been running out Jake Berger, or maybe it's. I mean, you're not dropping Riley, but maybe you're just kind of hoping to supplement your offense a little bit. Maybe Marte can provide that. That ballpark will certainly help things out. Let's do one more quick one here. How worried should I be about Freddie Peralta? Usually leave him in my lineup every week. That's where he should be every week. He should be in your lineup.
Yes.
And I'm a start your studs type of guy. If there's a pitcher you drafted as your SP1 and you're sitting him, it's you're up shit's creek without a paddle. I think you got to be putting him in there as much as it might not be as nice as it might have looked a few weeks ago for Freddie Peralta. My updated starting pitcher rankings, I believe I had him at 13 or something, 14. Like I'm not worried. Is he as high as he was on the previous rankings? No. Am I ever gonna sit him even against the Dodgers, Houston, Braves, whoever? I just couldn't bring myself to do that. What about you?
My question would be, okay, let's say you take him off of your lineup. Who are you going to put in there instead?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you have somebody who's, I don't know, playing Oakland A's or somebody like that who, you could probably put up a W. Everybody has been kind of hit or miss this year. Even my studs have had blow up games. It's just a crazy year for pitching.
Yep.
So absolutely you put him in because I don't again, I don't know your team, but I doubt you have somebody better that you could trust as much as a Freddie Peralta, who could still give you the strikeouts, who could still probably help you out with your whip and a lot of the other places, even though he might, get his ERA messed up. So there's a lot of different things there. And I know he's been like 1.38 in the last 7 games. I expect him. He's a veteran. He's shown he can do it. He's not a flash in the pants like a heel or somebody of that nature where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So yeah, start him all day long.
Yeah, honestly, even if it's like an 8-team league, I couldn't really bring myself to do it unless you have just such a beautiful setup for that week where you've got, like you mentioned, you got a bunch of Oakland starts and White Sox and Marlins and stuff. Then maybe, but it would need to be like it's probably less than 1% of leagues where I'd even consider it, and even then, I'd feel kind of weird about it. But I think we're gonna wrap there. Gone for just shy of an hour here. And nature is starting to call. So we're going to wrap it up there. JP, I really appreciate you making the time in the middle of the day today. I want everybody to go and follow you on Twitter at DAPScout, DAPSCOUT. Get the numbers up over there. Doing great stuff at Fantasy Six Pack and elsewhere. Let the people know where they can find you and what you got going on.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, like Joe said, you can find me on Fantasy Six Pack. You can find me every Thursday on the Fantasy Six Pack show, which is like I said at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern on YouTube. And then also I do the weekly waiver wire report where I pick the top 6 names off our report that we do, and I try to bring a little bit of humor into it and a lot of numbers as well. So you can always catch that. And of course, I'm always open for lineup advice or anything else on Twitter. And again, Joe, thank you so much for having me on. I'd love to be on anytime you want. I'm always open, man. Anytime for you.
Absolutely, man. I'll have to get you back. It's been a blast. You're one of the most welcoming dudes in the industry. You're hilarious. It's always great getting to hop on the mic with you. For those of you who are still here in the chat, please do hit the subscribe button. We're still building up the page. I want to see some more when I hit the stop button on this stream. Get those numbers up here. Keep them growing. There's a lot of stuff for you guys to check out video-wise, and also upcoming live streams from myself, from Dan Vespers on the basketball side. There's a lot of fun stuff for you. Should I hold Yimi Garcia after Romano comes back? Yes, because Romano does not look good. I'm worried about what's going to happen here going forward. But that will do it, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow if you're listening on the podcast feed to talk about Thursday's slate and look ahead to some Friday streamers. But until then, everybody take care. Have a great night.
Yeah.